And now, the Expressway Touring Showdown with your host, Zachary Rubino.
Hey everybody. Actually, Zachary Rubino will not be here today. My name is James Madison. This is Olivia, also from Expressway. Today, our guests are director Lamont Nathaniel Gibson and producer Kemi Jackson. We'll be discussing some projects they've collaborated on and some other things. And thank you both for joining the show and sharing your work with us. How have you guys been through all the quarantine and whatever else?
Yeah, pretty good. Just been hanging out with family and Zoom calls and stuff like that, and just sort of like trying to figure out what's next in this post grad situation.
Nice, Lamont. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I was just finishing up my year with artist year and stuff like that. So we moved basically remote locations once high school was shut down. So we did a little bit of online work, doing some YouTubing with different like art projects for students, stuff like that.
Yeah, you've been working with students, in a local high school or in local high schools.
In Frankfurt High School from 9th to 12th grade. Those for September until March, until like the quarantine started like March 15th.
And you've been working with them on like filmmaking and the craft and like what was the program you were doing?
So the program was photography, but I was working with them in filmmaking because they had like beginner people who wanted to work with camera. So I just basically taught them camera and sound, different little lighting tips that were different from photography, which would be different from cinema and stuff like that. Like how would you like cinema, stuff like that.
Cool. All right. Well, I met both these wonderful filmmakers through various projects and initiatives that Expressway is proud to be involved with at Temple University. All three of us are Temple alumni, which is very relevant to the projects we'll be discussing. And the first film we'll be talking about was a collaboration between both of these filmmakers. Lamont directed it, Kemi produced it. This is also a project that's near and dear to my heart because I had the distinct honor of awarding this film Best Documentary at last year's Diamond Screen Film Festival at Temple University. The film also won Best Undergrad Film. And maybe you could talk about winning that award. Were you surprised to win, or how did you feel?
About Best Undergrad or Best Documentary?
I guess both, either.
Well, Best Doc, I felt like I had a chance, but when I talked to you, I felt like you played me out, and I didn't know if I had a chance or not. And then Best Undergrad, I just didn't think that I was really up for that. About a week before, I guess prior to Diamond Screen, we had another screening that was like private for the Derek Freeze Foundation, and I was like shut out any awards that night, so I didn't really go into like Diamond Screen thinking I was going to win it. So it was kind of.
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful film. The film is called T.E.M.P.L.E, which is an acronym for T.E.M.P.L.E, My People Leave Enriched, or also known as T.E.M.P.L.E, which is the name of the university where it was produced. Temple University is the backdrop of the film and the surrounding neighborhoods. Both Kemi and Lamont were students at Temple when they produced this film together. And one of the more interesting aspects of the film is the conflict between the content and the university where it was produced at. The film confronts some very real and unflattering issues of gentrification and encroachment by the university into the surrounding communities and into the communities of these filmmakers. We're going to play the opening segments of the film to introduce it, and then we'll get started with some of these discussions. Luke, let's take it away.
Nathaniel Gibson. I am a narrative and documentary filmmaker, a Temple University student, but most importantly, an African American. I was born at Temple University Hospital, January 7th, 7 days late. My mom worked as a retail sales associate, and my father worked as a nurse assistant. They were working class people, tried to make sure their kids were fed. I grew up in the Logan section of North Philadelphia. Mostly low-income working class citizens lived there, a predominantly African American neighborhood.
Everywhere I look for faces, and familiar faces. Where did you come from? Everywhere I look for faces, and even familiar faces. Where did you come from?
Temple may not realize it, but over the past few years, it's done some things that have made people in the community feel like they're being pushed further out the places where they're allowed to be in. There's all kinds of projects where there's expansion. People are affected in a lot. It's hurt the relationship that the university has with the community. It's, really created a lot of agitation. There are new dorms that have been built. They've become more expensive. So because of that, students are forced out into the community. There has to be a certain kind of culture around living in the community. There has to be a level of respect.
The mission of Stadium Stompers is to try to inform people in the neighborhood and beyond about Temple University's encroachment. Many people still aren't aware that there's going to be a stadium and that this stadium will not benefit, not even Temple, because Temple students are going to not benefit. The state gave more money for Temple, yet Temple still raised tuition. A 35,000 seat stadium, I don't really see 35,000 Black folks going to the game. So who's this for?
When in one of my classes, I'm the only Black student in my journalist class. And the funny thing about that, when I was in that class, all the white students, they busting it up like this is not the first day of school, like, you know what I mean? So just the fact, they don't even know each other, but they comfortable. And that's big. You can just be around a bunch of white people, just be comfortable. And I'm just looking at them like, you know what I mean? I'm not about to be somebody.
All right, Lamont, we lost you there for a second, but we got you back. I'm
Yeah.
you're familiar. Pretty sure you're familiar with the film. So, maybe you can kind of just walk us through. This is obviously a really personal project for you. So, maybe you can walk us through the film, what it's about, and what your connection is. Like, essentially, why did you make this film?
So I made the film just to show like the community versus like the institution, and just like the difference, I guess, between the community and institution, and like how I felt like that was different from like the mission that Temple had at one time to what it is now, because of the progression and everything. So with that clip right there in the beginning, I had a lot of fight with like starting with that song because they felt like it was very slow. It was a little bit melodic, and it was like it's probably gonna know people to sleep. But I wanted to start with that song, "Where Did You Go?" because it's like where did you go? Like what happened? What's changed in your mission that now we don't involve the community and what we do anymore? What has changed that what has we're giving you money and stuff like that. So it was just more of an outcry to show like how gentrification is affecting the community around it, and just the fact that they're not really like educating the people inside the community like they would people that go to Temple. So
that song is such a
Yeah.
strong opening along with those images. I feel like it's just like the perfect song to accompany the opening of your film. I think it's such a strong opening.
Yeah, and Lamont, I didn't mention this, but you grew up in that neighborhood, right?
Yeah, I grew up about like 4 stops away from Temple. Yeah.
And so this is a subject that you've grown up with, and has it always been this way? Is it increasingly, worse in terms of the encroachment or the relationship?
Well, I think that the encroachment is a little bit worse because now it feels like it's more silent. In the years before, you could be able to go to public meetings and stuff like that, and they'll hear people out. And people talk a lot about transparency. We're being transparent with you, but at the same time, it's not really transparent. It's like what their plans are, for the future in North Philadelphia. So yeah, growing up in North Philadelphia, the price changing and things going up and up, it just started to be like more of a problem for like if people didn't go to college, like would they be able to afford this? Because I just think about that every time, like when I have to move again and the price goes higher and higher. And I was just thinking, like, what about people who don't have education, who don't have the means, to make more? Like, how are they surviving? And stuff like that. So it just was like we need to look at our infrastructure, our system, more outreach plans. That's what I was thinking about. Because Temple had a lot of outreach plans that they did for the community, but a lot of those things have gone away, and there's no talks of anything in the future.
Kemi, you are the producer of this film, and I think have a very personal connection to this film as well. You grew up in a different neighborhood, but very similar university issue. Can you speak to how you connected with this film and what it was like working on this project, and I guess your connection to the subject?
Yeah. Even though I'm from West Philly, so I'm not from North Philly. But regardless, I'm from Philadelphia. I've lived here my whole life. And I noticed when I lived in West Philly when I was younger that, University of Penn and Drexel, like the students were moving further and further away from the campus, so like University of Penn, their campus is at like 34th or 32nd and Market or something like that. But then I live at 48th and Pine, and I see more students just coming back and pushing further into West Philly. And you notice it, especially like the change in name, like when I grew up, when I was like 10 or something in my neighborhood, it was called West Philly. But now people call, the part where I used to live University City because these colleges are pushing further and further back into the community. And, I don't live at 40th and Pine anymore. I live off of 56th and Market because, just in general, like my family, we moved. But also I just noticed like just our neighbors would be gone in a year, and it would be students coming in and moving into their houses instead of our neighbors being there. And it's just something that you notice, like, especially for me, when I went to Temple, that was something I noticed in the surrounding area. It was all college students, but growing up, I know for a fact, because I had family down there, that there were, neighbors that weren't college students. They were just citizens. They were community builders. They were people that lived there for a very long time, and they lost their family homes because, property taxes raised, or they weren't able to just afford, their mortgage. And Temple University, they moved in, and it just shows like the disconnect between the two communities, Temple and the North Philadelphia community. So,
We're going to play another segment here. I kind of want to talk about, obviously Temple University has had an impact, Lamont, on your home community, and that's left an impression on you enough to make this fantastic film. Yet you chose to attend Temple. I want to play a segment of the film, and then we can kind of talk about that relationship and that dynamic, and what that was like for you. So we'll play this and discuss. Oh, sound. Oh, technical difficulty. 1 second, guys. Well, maybe you could talk about that while we get that figured out. You did go to Temple. My question was going to be, what was that like going, beginning to attend Temple, going through this process, and how do you feel now?
I don't know. Going to Temple was kind of like an out of body experience, I guess, for me. It was 3 years of me just like really intent on like getting towards my goal. I was given like a mini scholarship to go to Temple because I graduated from CCP with like a high GPA, and I thought it was a great idea to like be able to go back to your home neighborhood and be able to graduate and stuff like that. Plus, I was born at Temple University Hospital, so it just seemed like full circle. But at the same time, I didn't feel like I was accepted in Temple, um, and it was just like a lot of focus on my part just to keep like going. As you can see in that one part, I'm just thinking to myself like, am I part of the problem now? Being an artist, also going into poor areas that I can afford. Am I also causing gentrification on my own part now? But that's just like that what do you call it? That double-edged sword. You have the education now. What do you do with it?
Yeah. Well, we've got the clip queued up now, so let's let it roll, and then we'll come back to this.
I feel torn within myself being educated by Temple. Am I part of the community? Am I causing more harm? What happened to the culture that made me, underprivileged into living below or at the poverty line? Underprivileged for me was being in the Philadelphia school system that wasn't giving me the tools to be successful in the world, not having the correct textbooks and materials that other schools outside of Philadelphia had. As much as things have changed, in some cases, they tend to stay the same.
Boom, 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 boom. Snow covering the trees, suffocating my way to breathe, keeping the life from the sea, and ain't nobody else but me. Boom, so isolated, slowly cutting ties, making replacements. Boom, boom, just trying to find my way back home. But my home is gone. Just trying to get my soul and my feet to the floor, but there ain't no place to go. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, so I love your use of music in this, and artists and musicians. Obviously that segment spoke to your inner conflict with attending Temple, and we can talk again about that. But I did want to talk about your use of musicians in this film, and what that creative process was like. Did you feel like that was an intentional decision from the get-go, or did it kind of develop later?
That was something from the get go. I came up with Kemi, and I was like, "Oh, it'd be a great idea to get some underground artists, from Philadelphia that are working in Philadelphia, to get some, what you call it, some original lyrics for the film."
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, wow, I know some people," and she also had a friend, Sienna, that you see right there, and she came up with a little verse and everything, and I was like, "Oh, this is perfect," because I tend to live in a metaphorical so much, and it just spoke so loud, in front of the portrait of the black kids and stuff like that, and suffocating my way to breathe and everything. And I was just like, yeah, like this is perfect. And then I just wanted to incorporate that music because I felt like North Philadelphia also had a scenery of jazz music back in the day and stuff like that. And I thought that the music, part of my life, it was part of North Philadelphia. And I was just like, okay, we need to bring in that North Philadelphia music with the facts and stuff like that, as well as not trying to bore anybody into sleep,
So this music was written exclusively for this film?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Kemi, how'd you come up with how did you come up with the artists to be in this film? You obviously have the producer's mentality, I have an idea, and you're like, let's go do it.
Yeah. I'm just
yeah, that was Kemi. Okay, Kemi.
Oh, sorry, Lamont.
Yeah, go ahead, Kemi.
I was just gonna say because that was Kemi mostly coming because I had her to get the artist, and then I just looked at Instagram. I just looked at their Instagram, and and then I was like, okay, these ones will do well. There's one artist that didn't make it to the film, but that's because of a shooting problem. But
yeah, no, it definitely. I was just lucky to have a lot of creative friends at Temple, and I just asked my one friend Asia. I was just like, I know you're in the music, photography field. Do you know anyone that would be willing to be a part of this project and would be able to do some verses for us? And she just gave me a bunch of people, their Instagram handlers, and she was just like, I'll let them know that you're going to contact them, but I definitely think they'll be down. And it also helped that, you know, all of the artists that we got are from Philadelphia. And I believe at least 3 of them went to Temple as well. And Siani, she actually, I believe she was a freshman at Temple when she shot that.
Yeah.
It was lucky that, you know, she grew up in North Philadelphia and she wanted to be a part of it. And once I explained it to her, she was all down for it. So yeah.
Now, did they get to
Nice.
review any of the footage that you had already taken to write that music?
No.
They
we
just
just told them the idea behind the documentary, what we were looking for, what Lamont wanted. And then they just gave us some verses that, you know, because a lot of them, they've experienced this gentrification as well. So they have, you know, firsthand knowledge of what we were making the documentary for. So they just gave us the verses back. I sent them to Lamont. He loved them. And we just, you know, got people together so we could start shooting them as well in person. So, yeah.
Nice. There's so many layers to this project. I think it's one of the things I was so drawn to about it was just the sheer scope of it and execution. You know, obviously I'm one of the founders of Expressway Cinema Rentals, so I do lean kind of towards, you know, technical execution and scope. It just was an impressive project, which speaks to the work of both of you. But would love to talk about Lamont's roles here in terms of being the director, the creative producer, the director of photography, and you know, I've talked to both of you about, you know, what this was like, but maybe you could talk about what it was like to wear all those hats, and you know, maybe a little bit about why that was the decision.
Oh man, if I didn't have to wear all those hats, I wouldn't have worn all those hats. Like I would have loved help. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, but I had a you know, a goal set in mind with going to film school and stuff like that, and I wanted to lead it with a, you know, a really good finished product that I could, you know, use for the future. So I guess for me not wanting to stress anybody out, I took on a lot of the stuff myself. And I had an idea of like what I wanted to see, especially like with the portraits of the black faces and like the extreme close up of the eye. Like I had already a significant idea exactly what I wanted, and I just knew that I just had to like put it together as like, you know, as good as possibly as I could. But yeah, I would have loved a little bit more help.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, you know, Kemi, I think it's obvious that you did a fantastic job on this film. Again, speaking to the scope of it, just the execution of it. I know from being a recovering producer that that took a lot of work. And I know initially from our conversations, you were not supposed to be the producer, or that wasn't supposed to be how it was like set up. Can you talk about that process and how you became the producer on this film?
Yeah, so Lamont was a senior when I was a junior, so we were both in concentration, but I was in the junior program for producing that concentration, and I was approached by my professor Leanne, and she just told me, you know, she thought that she had somebody in the senior directing concentration that needed a producer because there just weren't any producers in the concentration in his year that were able or willing to produce his documentary. And once she put me in contact with Lamont, you know, he talked to me about it. He told me about it. And then we also had like mutual friends, and I talked to them, and they were just like, "Oh, it'd be great to work with him." So I was just like, "That sounds perfect." You know, like I loved the idea and the concept about it. So I just thought that, you know, why not produce it? My whole thing was that I also, like, same as Lamont, like I wanted to leave Temple with a body of work that I like actually would show people and actually like want to talk about, and like I believe in, like, and this documentary, like Tell them I leave my people enriched, like that's something that, you know, is a goal of mine with throughout my film career, is to make sure that I'm just expanding and portraying like the voices of my community and of people of color. So doing this documentary, like even though like technically I wasn't supposed to be the producer on it because I was in the junior concentration, like I wouldn't have changed it for the world. Something I was wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and you did a fantastic job. And sometimes you got to take things into your own hands to create something great. But but backing up a little further, you know, the film, you say in concentration, the film was produced as part of Temple's thesis program,
Mm-hmm.
and every project has to go through, you know, a sort of vetting and approval process. Lamont and I guess Kemi, can you talk to me about what that process was like for this film and why it didn't turn out exactly the way it was probably supposed to?
Yeah, Lamont, do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
I couldn't hear that. They were doing fireworks over here. I'm sorry. Can you say that one more time?
Okay. No, I was saying this just kind of piggybacking off the last question. This was part of T.E.M.P.L.E's thesis program. There is a whole submission process and a certain way that the projects are supposed to go. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what that project process is supposed to be like and what it was like for this film.
Yeah. Well, I guess I gotta say I probably put them in an awkward position. I am like a documentary student, and they had like 9 narrative students, so I was in a concentration where it wasn't really focused on me. So I just had to like put it together as much as possible. So with the concentration, is you get like a cinematographer, you get an editor, you get a producer, and your team comes together and you like put the idea together and you go out and shoot it. So with me, we had to basically do like a presentation where we show like our trailer and stuff like that and what we wanted to do, and then people would pick the people that they want. So I guess nobody picked me, so they gave me whoever was left. And like the people that were left were people that weren't like haven't been out in the field, haven't really done anything technical yet, and also they were a little bit wary about their safety in the neighborhood and stuff like that. So it became like a constant battle for me, like texting and trying to get them to come out and shoot and stuff like that. So I would just usually go out and shoot by myself and like bring somebody else with me, call a friend that might be on campus, stuff like that, to come and shoot with me and hold the camera or like hold something for me, something like that. So I was just making sure that it all still got done in the process, and still just like not getting the
Yeah,
help I was going to
I
get with
saw.
the program.
I think including yourself, there's 4 other cinematographers credited in the film.
Yeah, that's like 2 graduates and then like I think 2 undergrads. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is still an attestment to a large undertaking, especially having to handle a lot of that yourself. And Kemi, maybe you can speak to the same question. I think that this film was best served by you being the producer, but that wasn't the original intent or how the program was supposed to be handled. So maybe you can shed some light on how this all went.
Yeah, I just feel like it wasn't. I think when people don't have a stake into what your project is about, they don't want to like necessarily work on it. And I think the people in the concentration, they, whatever reason they didn't pick Lamont's documentary to work on, they didn't have a stake in the game. Like this wasn't like they didn't recognize this as their fight, because that probably gentrification wasn't affecting them. They're T.E.M.P.L.E students. Like it's a positive thing for them to gentrify the neighborhood in a way because they're getting their education, they're getting they're being able to live in the neighborhood and being close to their campus. So I feel like if it wasn't like the people who were in the concentration might not have been able to properly work on Lamont's because they just, like Lamont said, some people were saying they didn't feel safe with shooting around T.E.M.P.L.E, but we shot literally like in a 4 or 5 block radius within T.E.M.P.L.E, the university. So it wasn't like we were going like crazy like in the heart of North Philly, even though T.E.M.P.L.E is in the heart of North Philly. But people were still saying they felt unsafe when it's just like you've lived here and you went to the school for 4 years. How do you not feel safe in this community when you're supposed to be a part of the community? So it was just a lot of problems with the cinematographers and the editors as well. Like, I believe we were given 2 editors, but one of them graduated in December, but we had we weren't even halfway through the project when she graduated. And then we were given another editor. So it's just like, it wasn't some of the consideration for this project for the documentary. I felt like it just wasn't given the same consideration as for the other projects. And it just felt like we were working by ourselves and trying to figure out, all right, who can we get as crew? Like what friends do we have at T.E.M.P.L.E that are able to come out for a couple of hours to help us? Who can, like, how can we get food for everyone? Where are we going to get this money from? How are we going to fundraise this? Like we like, because Lamont and I, we were both very busy people. Like, we have jobs. Like, I had different projects, I had classes in my club. So it's just like we had to work around our schedules, plus work around just the critiques that we were getting from, you know, the department as well. Like, you know, being more general instead of focusing like on like, you know, the neighborhoods in Temple, focused on like gentrification as a whole with universities. But it's just like this affects us because we go to Temple. So it's just like a lot of back and forth, a lot of just sort of like saying, okay, we're going to just do this on our own and we'll give you the finished product and we'll show you. But I definitely think that, like Lamont said, if he didn't have to wear those many hats, he would not have. But if he didn't, then the project would not have turned out the way that it did. So,
yeah. And Lamont, you had sort of mentioned that maybe you put them in kind of a tough spot, you know, which I think is maybe letting them off the hook a little bit. But maybe you can kind of talk about that. Do you feel like there was like a reaction to the content within like the program?
Yeah, I felt like they thought it was an attack on them. They felt like why are you coming after us? Like, what did we do wrong? It's like, oh, University of Penn is worse and all this other stuff. And I was like, I can't really talk about University of Penn because I didn't grow up around University of Penn. So I can talk about Temple. Yeah, you know, I can talk about Temple. I've pretty much spent my life around Temple, so it made much more sense for me to talk about something that I knew and I could see with my own eyes what was happening. And it was just a lot of negative attention towards it. And I just felt like, I'm not sure. I was like, at one point I didn't really feel as though I was going to get the project done, but I just like kept staying in the production lab like every day and just kept on working on it and just like going through it from section to section of what I wanted to like be able to get across. I also had like two different cuts. I had like a 15-minute cut and then like an 18-minute cut. And this is the 18-minute cut because this is the one that I thought was a little bit stronger because it had the poetry as well as the music and the shots that I wanted and stuff like that. So it was a little bit difficult. And yeah, I don't know. I was just like, I was so happy to be in the program. I did think at the same time, I was like, oh, okay, I thought I would also get the same attention as well. And I was like, oh, what's
yeah, I feel like it's like supporting an artist 101 is to encourage them to tell their story. It's very disappointing to hear.
Yeah, I think they were happy when it done well though, because I mean now they just like support me really well.
Well, you did a great job.
Yeah.
So I'd like to play one more segment from this film. Luke, if you got it queued up. And then we have some questions, I think, for Kemi following up on that. I think Luke's back there.
Not only here, it's
there we
wherever
go.
poverty rests.
Millions of rude awakens in the fast-paced nation, but the topic at hand, we talking gentrification like Miranda families get together. That's a foundation with low income. Now the city come in and take it like, give me your homes and your schools. You don't need knowledge. Tearing down our communities for an expensive college when kids can barely go to elementary, middle, and high. Claiming that a change is going to come. I wonder how and why. There's no powerful collision when there's division. Mom, pop, son, and daughter, they homeless with no pot to piss in.
Getting to know some Temple grads who have taught, particularly white Temple graduates. I'm trying to figure, why is it you don't know any more about Black folks than what you know? Temple is a guest in North Philadelphia, and it needs to understand that and respect that. Temple is behaving as if it is North Philadelphia. It is not North Philadelphia. Temple, like Penn, like Drexel, like St. Joe's and the rest, can be very patient, waiting for people to die, waiting for people to move, to take over your land. It's a land grab issue here, but it's also a 100% disrespectful attitude that Temple, along with other institutions, really have, particularly in that they are located in Black neighborhoods.
Y'all wonder why we still kill hurting numerous victims when they got no home to go to, a circle made by the system. Instead of rebuilding factories, giving people's jobs, y'all work the inner city, these outskirts struggling hard. Cops turn their head, these dealers avoiding the yard, potholes in the street. Y'all barely focus on the small, but if y'all move people away, then y'all think that's cool. That's not true. What if reality start hitting you? So instead of taking action and making your own thing, how about talk to the community to make it equal change?
And there's those amazing musicians again. You guys did such a good job of choosing those. And his verses were already existed, or did he create those for the film?
No, he created those. Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's what I'm saying. I was just like, wow, it came out really well.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, just kind of, coming back to the topic, it's just such like a pertinent and immediate subject. Like there's an urgency to it because this is actively happening. And it's not just happening here, but this is something that's happening at probably every urban university everywhere. At being a Temple alumni, I feel vested in it, in that there is sort of like a at least a verbal sort of motto of Temple, that it's supporting like the local communities and it's giving back in into the community, and that's like what they're conveying. So I mean, this is kind of like antithetical to what their mission is supposed to be. What do you think can be done? I know there's a lot of sort of damage done in the relationship and trust issues and ongoing encroachment. Like what do you think can be done, or what can happen that could help?
Well, I know the relationship, with Temple and the community is pretty broken, but it's this thing at Temple called like strategic communications, which basically like runs some of the programs for the community and stuff like that. And with some of the programs that they run for the community, it comes with like different things that people have to do and stuff like that. So I'm just like, it's the image that they put out there and versus what they're doing. So I think if you see one of the public hall meetings when they were talking about the stadium, like how they weren't going to build a stadium and like they put it all hold, but they're still like looking at investors for the stadium and stuff like that, that will like misplace people. It would just make, since they got the Met up there already, it's already going to make it a more populated area. So it's just that I guess that word transparency again, they were really being transparent about what they were doing and like really voicing it to the community. Because I mean, I'm not sure if the relationship could get any better. Because at this point, it just was like, they're basically lying to us. They're not trying to fix up any neighborhoods around Temple. They're trying to fix up their campus, and then they want to, make sure these, places look bad, so that way they can buy them at cheap price and then be part of their campus. So it's just a weird little cycle going on right now. That's up to President Engler, right?
I think that drone footage that you captured right above Temple that shows the campus, it made me think about how in your film she said, Temple and Penn and Drexel are waiting for people to die. It definitely doesn't feel that way. It feels like they are going out into that area, going out into that space, regardless of who's there or not. And you can really capture that feeling from just looking at that massive campus and how it's spread out into the community.
Yeah. With that drone shot, it was just to show like how massive the campus already is, like how it's still growing. And that was just like Susquehanna to Cecil B. Moore. And, that's already a big stretch. And I'm sure they probably, trying to get up there on Allegheny because they already got the hospital up there. So I'm just thinking like in probably like 10 to 20 years, Temple probably like owns Broad Street, at least North Broad. So it wouldn't be like out of the possibility.
Yeah, they're working on it, I think. But so this is a short film with the intent of becoming a feature film. What are you currently working on in terms of developing that?
So basically now I'm just trying to figure out like the whole layout and idea for it because I didn't want it to be too long, so I was trying to think of like an 80-minute doc where it just focuses on all the parts of Philadelphia and the education system within Philadelphia and like why gentrification is happening in the urban neighborhoods of Philadelphia and what's going on at this time. So I just because I mean obviously I moved around a lot in Philadelphia and now I'm in West Philadelphia, so it's more of just trying to encompass like, okay, this is as I think I was telling you before in a pre-interview, like this is a microcosm of what's going on in other urban areas around the United States. And like if we look at it from a grander scheme, can we change the way that it's going, or can we, invest in those people that are losing and stuff like that? And I think that's the one thing I wanted to bring light to. I was like, okay, is there a way that these people that are losing out, can we reinvest in them so they don't have to turn to crime and drugs and stuff like that? So I think that's the most biggest problem. I think people don't understand because they think, oh yeah, the price is raised, but that means, better neighborhood, less crime. And I'm thinking like that probably means more crime because now people think you got money. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah. Well, just keep us up to date on, what the progress is on that. And we're, happy to share whatever, initiatives you might have moving forward, trying to get this, into a larger project. So I think it's a really important subject that, as I said, has an immediacy. Like, it is happening. It's happening right now. And I can't speak for every university everywhere, but I'd love to see Temple, do the right thing. And, it's probably going to take a lot to figure that out. But, something like this, bringing it to people's attention is definitely important. Kemi, I kind of wanted to come back to you. You had mentioned earlier a couple of things. Your ongoing mission and kind of wherever you go has sort of been centered around the betterment of whatever community it is that you're involved in at the time, and the empowerment of communities of color. And wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of your initiatives and organizations that you had founded when you were at Temple. If you could tell us a little bit about that. And I think it's really important for that film program, some of the things that you had started to establish.
Yeah. I co-founded Film in Color. It's a film organization for students of color to network and just like learn in like a safe space with each other. And then I co-founded it, I believe in 2018 with my best friend Han. She was also in one of the concentrations, the screenwriting concentration. And she approached me. I remember we were in the McDonald's off of Susquehanna, and she was just like, "Hey, I have like this great idea for a film organization, and I think you would be great. A lot of people in the in the program as well, so we can come together and sort of just create this organization, find a faculty advisor, and just start holding events for the students of color in the film department." Because I was a transfer student, like same for Lamont. Like I transferred from CCP after I graduated, did the same like scholarship program that he did as well. And when I came to Temple, like I had expectations of just like, I'm gonna start, getting in the gritty nitty and start producing a bunch of stuff and like make a bunch of friends. And, we're gonna be like film nerds together and go out here and just like do crazy things. And then I got there and I was like, oh crap, I'm like, it's 3 out of like 60 people in the classroom, 3 people are of color. And I'm just like, oh dang, I'm the only Black girl in here. Like, this is very awkward. And it's just like, like even in the documentary, like when the NAACP, like the Temple NAACP chapter, they were talking about like the camaraderie that, white students have with each other. And like the ease that they can feel around each other. That's not something that, a lot of students of color in the film department were able to feel. So we created Film in Color. Our first event, I believe, was in October of 2018. And then we started partnering with other film organizations, Mise en Femme, they're the women's film organization, and then QFC, the Queer Film Collective, and they're the LGBTQ organization in the film department. And we've hosted events. One of the biggest events we did host was last year. It's called Behind the Screens. And it was basically an event where we invited different film organizations in the Temple area to come and talk to the students and network to the students and panel there. And Expressway was there as well as like Scribe. Philly Cam was there. A lot of film festivals were there, the Latino Film Festival, the Women's Film Festival. And we did that because we noticed a need for students of color, as well as students from different demographics, LGBT community, women in film. Like, we noticed that they needed to know what was out there, like what was in their disposal in Philly, because Philly is such a creative community, and a lot of people didn't know the access that they had to these organizations, or that they were even out there and they were there to help them, or you can intern with them, you can talk to them, have informative sessions with them. So that was the goal of the Behind the Screens. And then we had panels that talk about diversity within the film festivals and the film industry, and also just how breaking barriers within the film industry, and how women of color or people from the LGBT community, like how they had to break into those barriers within the film industry in Philly. So that was the Behind the Screens. And then we had like smaller events that we also hosted throughout the year. But that was our biggest event that we did with the other two
Yeah,
organizations.
I'd like to say that I was, you just mentioned I was at that event. I thought it was amazing. I do go to a lot of Temple events, for the reason of putting ourselves out there as a resource. And I thought the fact that that event even existed was just a really great resource, for the students, because it did open doors for a lot of people who otherwise didn't have access to companies like mine, or for whatever reason weren't aware of the resources they had access to. And I thought you did such an amazing job of connecting those communities. I'd said to you before, I think it was the best event I had been to at Temple. I was so impressed. And I would love for you to talk about, that necessity to have like a collaborative atmosphere amongst all the organizations, although I think it's great and created such an atmosphere of like just an exciting atmosphere. But you had mentioned that there was like a specific reason why that's necessary, as opposed to maybe other events or organizations that, have more support.
Yeah, because I mean, it's necessary because in the film department, in the film and theater department, there aren't a lot of people of color. And when you're in a room, like, I don't know if people know this, but it's highly like uncomfortable to be in a room and be the only person of color and then also be the only woman. And it's just like when the people that are your peers don't represent you, and then your faculty who are supposed to be there to teach you don't represent you, like you start to wonder, like, why am I even in this major? Like, if this is what the film department looks like, what does the film industry look like? And it's just like the film department is just a smaller representation of what the film industry is. So it definitely is disheartening. I know some people who, they decided that they didn't want to be in the film department and they decided to transfer majors just because they were just like, I don't see that representation for me, and I'm not gonna sit in a classroom and feel uncomfortable about like certain discussions and not feel like they can voice their opinion because they don't want to be looked at like the oddball out or just like being the angry like Black girl and stuff like that. So it's very important to have these organizations as a foundation to start a conversation within the department. And I think that's something that we have started. I do know that even though I graduated, I still get like the Temple emails. And the TFMA department, they actually sent out an email on June 19th about creating a more diverse and inclusive program and curriculum, because all of the organizations that I mentioned before, including my own, like we have talked to the administration about how the program needs to be more inclusive for race, but also like economic status. Like there are certain students that have the funds to, buy a camera that's not from the equipment office and have better quality, are able to fund their project wholeheartedly. And then there are some students who have to, have to do GoFundMe's and they have to do like other like means of like funding because they don't have the money to just blow, and they have multiple jobs. So I definitely think that Temple is now taking, especially with everything that's happening, they're trying to take some steps into rectifying what's wrong within the program and making it more inclusive in the curriculum, as well as just like the films that we talk about and the discussions that we have. There are a lot of films that have came out like over the past years. I do not need to be seeing the same white directors and white producers and cinematographers that we've been discussing for the last 50 so years. Like there are women out here that have created amazing films. There are people of color out here that have created amazing films. Like we need to be discussing them as well. And we shouldn't be seeing like Birth of a Nation. Like no one needs to see that. So I definitely think that Temple is recognizing the problem and they're listening. But I think that, with any, group or organization or business, because that's what Temple is, when any business recognizes a fault in their own, you have to be on top of them. You can't just be like, all right, like you're trying to change, great, let's move on. Like, no, you have to be like, hey, like, I want to see like the results. Like, I want to see what happens like after you decide, like, how do you change the curriculum? How are you changing it? I want to see the syllabuses. I want to see what you're doing. So I definitely think that one step is great, but like I need to see the next couple of steps that the TFMA department has. So yeah.
I think the work that you've done here, Kemi, is really, really amazing. I also have an art school background, and I was in the film program, and I saw the same thing you're seeing of just people feeling so disheartened that they don't have a space or that they have to carve out a space for themselves in a program. And yet, what you're doing is making a lasting impact that future people won't have to do that. And I think that's really admirable. I think it's unfortunate that it's incumbent upon marginalized people to create the space for themselves. But I think that you're making an impact that hopefully will last a really long time at Temple, hopefully forever.
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, I'm a very like persistent, nosy person. So I've already decided, and I've talked to like my co-president as well. You know, I definitely am joining like the TFMA, like their alumni board. Like I'm going to be in Philly.
I'll see you there.
Yes, you will. I'm going to be in Philly. I'm from Philly. I love Philly, and you know that's my school. I graduated from there, so I want to see the change like continue and just like more students of color, more students from, you know, the neighborhood and the surrounding area should, you know, be able to go to Temple and be like, hey, I want to be a filmmaker from this department, and be able to do that and not feel like they don't belong. So that's the
That's awesome. And like I said, I think the things that you created at Temple while you were there were great. They were they were the best things I attended. And a lot of that had to do with, the diversity and the inclusion. And I got to see more exciting projects, by, different groups of people that was, just really kind of reinstilled an excitement in me about the program as well. So, we'll be on the board. We'll make sure we keep this going.
Yes.
I want to introduce another project by Lamont before we, run ourselves out of time. We're having, a great discussion here. So this one's called "The Year to Become Me," and we'll play a segment here. There's no sound, Luke. Almost. He wants me to keep talking. Well, you know what? I can actually, Lamont. I wanted to kind of know from you. This is just such a beautiful film, and a spectacularly engaging subject. In the person that you decided to highlight, I wanted to know how this project came about.
So this was a project from making documentaries. I think it was like my first documentary class, and I decided to take it a little bit farther because I felt like there's a little bit more of a story there. First, the story had just focused on the education and not being able to pay for it, and then like when I was able to get it on my own, I was able to go a little bit more into like the deepness behind everything and like the mentality and going forward and stuff like that. Even though it's like it started breaking down the walls as it got farther and farther, and then it's like, okay, this is my underlying meaning. Okay, this is my deep underlying meaning, and like this is why I had to change. And I just wanted to show like how people are layers, and like it takes a person a while to get comfortable with somebody to tell you like, okay, this is what I'm really like feeling. This is why I do the things I do because of this person in my life,
So you've found the material of the documentary through making the documentary, then?
Yeah, making documentaries a class.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we had to basically do a documentary on like an issue and something like that. And so I did an issue on like tuition, obviously for out-of-state students, and he was an out-of-state student. And then I had turned in that one, and then I had, started to follow him a little bit more. I went to Baltimore with him one time to get some more footage and an interview with his mom. And I just like followed him for the rest of the year until I was able to get like another interview and another interview. And then that's like when more of it came out and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, okay, there's more to the story besides, the whole dream and everything. So.
I love that this beautiful piece like came from like a natural place and that you found it. I think that that's really amazing.
Yeah, so I think we're ready to roll here.
Yay.
I think we're ready to roll here. So without spoiling, we'll watch some of this and then we'll come back to it.
You know what I mean? So in this present moment, my goal in life is to feel comfortable in the skin I'm in. And I say that because, and that sounds so cliche, doesn't it? Who doesn't want to be comfortable in the skin they're in? You know what I mean? That's the honest to God truth. Because throughout my entire life, even since I can remember, why is this happening? God, even since I can remember, I always wanted to be something I wasn't. I lied. There was a point in my life in my younger years where I did not care what other people thought about me. And that's as children. My professor, oh my God, my acting one teacher, Amina Robinson, she talks about this thing called a backpack. We have this imaginary backpack that is stripped on us as soon as we enter this world. And then as we go along, we sort of find these societal norms, these laws that we must abide to, that we take and we put into our backpacks. And as we get older, our backpacks just get heavier and heavier and larger with all these things that we need, that we believe we need to be good people in this world. So when I was younger and my backpack was light, I was free. I wasn't scared to be who I was. And I was a happy child. And that was because I was comfortable in my skin, if we're being honest. So once we got into that territory where the norms of norms of gender, norms of sexuality, norms of people of color, especially as a Black person, once all those sort of caught up to me, that's when I started losing myself.
She ain't nothing but common. Now who you calling common? You self-indulgent, self-absorbed, and unprofessional. You, I'm calling you. I'm calling you the common.
So when I got to high school, that's when I was like, all right, I'm gonna change, I'm gonna shift, and it worked. At first it didn't, but I was like, if you keep working at it, if you keep pretending to be this thing that you're not, it's gonna work. People gonna pick on it, baby, and you're gonna be fine. You know what I mean? And I did, and it worked. It worked. And it was crazy because it was just like at the end of it, when I'm like, okay, this mission that I set myself upon, here I am, it's completed. Everybody is fooled. Everybody thinks I'm this person. Like, it's great. Like, yes, this is what we wanted. No more bullies. Like, we're lit. But in all reality, I was worse than I was when I was being bullied.
That's like he just said that. It's just such a powerful like metaphor that I think, obviously like that, that has a much heavier meaning for him, I think, than it would for me potentially. But everyone can relate to that backpack situation, and I sometimes look at my kids and like how free they are, and they don't know, like, they're not introduced. We work so hard so they're not introduced to like prejudices and like terrible like mentalities about things, and like you're just not gonna be able to like those societal norms that fill their backpack eventually is just like such an inevitable thing. That's so like it's that's just like a metaphor that I think everyone like really probably on some level can sympathize with. You tell us about that segment and kind of what your feelings are on that?
Yeah, so with that like partial segment, it was just basically like I said, like the layers were starting to come around, and you can see like behind the person what everything was going on with them. And the one thing I saw with Travoy, I saw obviously myself in him, and like being that person, having to put on that face and be like, oh, I have to be this type of way, or they're not gonna, set me or look at me a certain type of way. And I could just imagine like how much that pressure was for a child, and then also, with the other thing that come out, how much pressure he put on himself with that. So he was just like toppling himself with pressure on top of pressure on top of pressure, and it's like, how can you succeed with so much pressure on yourself? Like that's you're gonna crush yourself under your own pressure. And I was just thinking, like, we always live with those mental blocks that we feel like society puts on us, and then we try to break through because with everything, everybody wants to be like labeled and or don't want to be labeled, and then it's like they still gonna put you in a box, and you're just trying to like fight that way out. So it was really nice. It was really a great organic project, and I'm just like glad it came together. Like every time I watch it, I still cry a little because it's just so sad.
Yeah, and this is another project I see. Director, director of photography, all those hats again. Can you tell us about the process and maybe like if it was similar or different to T.E.M.P.L.E? And kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, this process wasn't that bad. At the beginning, I did have like another cinematographer working with me, and then we had different ideas of where the project was going. So then we did two separate ones, which she did hers and I did mine. And then I started to follow him on my own because I have my own camera and stuff like that to get more footage and stuff like that. But I felt like there was still more of the story there, and I think it was like after a year or so, I stopped following and I just like put together the footage with like the interviews that I had and stuff like that. And this was, I think, one of the last interviews that I had with him that was like set up in the studio inside of the tech center. And I mean, it came out pretty well. I think we had him in there for like an hour and a half. And this was supposed to have been like a outtake, but I thought it was really cool to keep in there because it just showed like how freely he is in the moment, and then like how much he's not really free in his mind. So it was just like, oh, this is a good contrast.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about what you used to shoot this? I mean, or what? Actually, if you tell us about those animations, was that something you had come up with initially that you were going to use, or what was the motivation behind that?
Yeah, and the animation was actually the person that I had in the first thing they wanted to do animation in it, and then I decided to do some more animation for it. So the hyper masculinity and then the two faces were the added additions I did with one of the graduate students that I knew, and I think it was another one, and then the mom waving, and I just added that to that. The Travoy thing was already there, and the running scene was already there, and the
Okay.
bookcase. I think we redid the bookcase as well.
I'm going to queue up one more clip here. Just give it a look, and we can talk about it. Luke says we're ready.
My mom is just this beautiful ray of sunshine and light and love and happiness, and just every time I see my mother, especially now being away from her, every time I see my mother, it's just I feel like a little kid again. I was a mama's boy when I was younger. There was a point in my life where if my mother had left for a long period of time, I'm talking like not even long, I'm talking like 30 minutes, I would flip out. I would call her, I would blow up her phone, I would do anything because I was so attached to this woman and the things that she had done for me. It was just the way she lived her life, the way she loved me, the way she took care of me was just exceptional. And if it wasn't for her, I don't know what kind of man I would be at this moment in time. You know what I mean? This woman raised me and installed morals and values and all these things within me to make me the person that I am today and the artist I am today. And I'm forever grateful for her. And when we talk about earlier, when I was talking about me sort of conforming to societal norms and stuff like that, as a child, I always felt like I was doing that to protect my mom. I felt like I was changing because I didn't want my mother to be that one mother, well, not that one mother, but that mother in her friend group with the gay son. You know what I mean? I really didn't want that for her. I didn't want her to 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 I feel like me being gay would one bring her to that realization, her being one of her friends that has a gay son. What about if she wants to bring somebody home and then I'm there, and she wants to build a relationship with this man and just, have love for herself. But I'm like, will this man love her if I'm gay? You know what I mean? But let me tell you, when I told my mother that I was gay, it was like a movie scene. I was in the library and I was walking in between the bookshelves and stuff. And then I called her on the phone and I was like, "Yeah, so I like boys." And then she was just like, "If that's what you like, that's what you like." She was like, "This is gonna be a really hard process for you." You know what I mean? She said, "Don't you think from one moment that I'm gonna ever stop loving you?" You know what I mean? And she told me to go on this journey with my head up high, and she told me that there are gonna be some people that want to get off the boat, want me to pull over and get off because they're gonna be like, this is too much. That's something I don't respect. That's something I don't accept. And she was like, that's gonna happen, and that's reality. But I'm gonna continue to move forward and continue to do it. So That woman is just. The woman is everything. That woman is everything. That woman is everything. I can go on and on about her. I can go on and on about her.
It's a great film.
Yeah.
What did you shoot that on?
So it's shot on a Canon 80D and with a Ronin, what do you call it? The Ronin S.
It's such a different it's such a different film from Temple. In it, like, I mean, just the sheer scope of it, like, it's so much more personal, and I feel like the way you shot it is so much more intimate and I think like closer to the subject, especially in the later interviews. Almost like right below his face. Can you talk about, like, what your ideas were for going into that?
For
how
the
you decided
interview?
how to shoot that? Yeah, did you have an idea of how you wanted to shoot this film, like, going into it? I know it was sort of over a period of time, but
Yeah. So yeah, this was more like me just going around getting B-roll and shots, pretty shots that I thought I would like to see and stuff like that. And as you can see, like the walking shots of him and stuff like that, contemplation shots as I call them and stuff. Um, and then I also with the interview, I did like a couple interviews, but I wanted to try to get like to the nitty gritty, like the bone, because I mean I knew the underlying issues and stuff like that, but I didn't know how comfortable he would feel about talking about stuff like that, and just that's the stuff that just affects him as a person, with the debt and stuff like that, and having the pressure, having that unseen pressure that he thought was coming from his mom, coming from his community. He also went to Temple too, so I can imagine he felt like one of the black actors at Temple that probably wouldn't get a good role. He just had so much going against him, but he was just like so lively, so happy. Didn't let that get him down. So I was just like, it's a really beautiful story, especially because his mom was such a stalwart in his life, and he just showed like because of her strength, he kept strong. So it was just really, really good project. This is like a really good project to first start on before Temple. 'Cause if I didn't have this before Temple, I probably would have been like, I can't do this. Yeah.
yeah, well, it's a great job, because I know these are really tough subjects. I think especially for a gay man, it's important to feel comfortable if you're, talking to someone about this kind of stuff. So, I mean, I think you did a great job of interviewing the subject. Obviously, you spent a lot of time with him, so it's really important, especially in making a documentary. So it's just great work.
Yeah. And I forgot the shot in the interview. I did it like my professor actually yelled at me about that because she was like, "Oh, why are you doing a shot from underneath him?" And I was like, I was trying to give him a sense of power. You know how sometimes they do it in narrative, they put the camera up low under low angle, so that gives you that sense of power in the frame. And I was like, well, let's try that for this interview. Because this is a point of view where he's not really feeling a sense of power. And I was like, how do we make him, be empowered in a situation where he's vulnerable? So. And I mean, I still kept the interview, as you can see, because I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna go with it, So I mean, because I just like the angle. It's just like, okay, we feel like, okay, he's big in the frame, he's in control in the situation, but at the same time, he's like spilling his gut, So I thought my professor gave me a really good bedtime about that.
Felt very intimate in a way that was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I couldn't get that close. So I was like, at least the camera could get close enough, so that way we're just like tight. And just all face, So
what's interesting you say that, because it does have like a dichotomy of like the angle versus the content, and it actually really works in that, like, and I didn't notice that until you mentioned it, that low kind of upward angle like does exude a sort of like confidence and like like an authority almost. And then like the things he's talking about are really, really vulnerable and obviously upsetting. And it like, I think it gives you this like really, really like the like how terrible it is that, this grown man is made to feel this way. I think it really worked. I think your professor was wrong.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. It's like, somebody could also be empowered and also be vulnerable as well. So I don't know, when you're in film school, you try to play against what the professor says and you try to challenge it. So that was my way of challenging it. I was just like, we're gonna see which one of us is right, and I won a couple of awards with that film. So
nice.
Just a couple awards.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, and I think we're getting to the end of our time here. I kind of wanted to talk to you guys both because you're in a kind of a unique position, maybe in like history, having graduated very recently before Lamont for you, and then Kemi during this pandemic, and I guess we could talk about that first, what that was like. What it's like, trying to enter the workforce right now and being a filmmaker. And then Kemi, I mean, you graduated, I'm assuming remotely.
Yeah.
So, maybe Kemi, you could talk about, what that's been like for you. I know you had a story that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I had an interesting last semester. Like I actually planned. I went out to LA through the program, the LA program, study away program that they do in the FMA department. And my goal was, I've been wanting to do this program before I even came to Temple. Is the whole reason that I went to Temple was for this exact program. And you get an internship out there, you take classes out there, but you're supposed to it's supposed to help you really immerse yourself in the LA film industry and the culture, and just to see if you want to, actually live out there. So I was out there. I went out there in January, and then right after spring break, we started hearing about COVID. But our professors, they told us, don't worry about it. Like they won't like send you home. You're fine. So like my family was freaking out. My friends were freaking out back home. But I was just like, no, we're good. We're good. And then I remember like my roommates and I, we went shopping one Sunday, and then we got an email right after we came back from grocery shopping saying we had to go home. And our first thought were, wow, we just bought all this food. So this is all about to like, what are you about to do with all of this? But yeah, it was just like, everything happened so fast that I think it was very hard for all of us to process it, because it was 4 of us, 3 of us were graduating as well. And most of us wanted to come back out to LA or stay out in LA. And the fact that we now sort of like the 2 months that we're supposed to still have to figure out our life, and what we're supposed to do after graduation is sort of just like taken away from us. And the transition of like going from like doing 2 internships a day. I worked as an intern at Sony Pictures and Film Independent in LA, and then having to come home and do like my Saturday class that's supposed to be traveling through LA remotely. It was just very strange and just also like very depressing at the same time, because it's like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to get into the industry now? And I think that for me at least, like I really had to take time to just sort of reflect back on why I wanted to be in the industry, and my goals for that, and focus on what I could control. Because I can't control COVID, I can't control, what's happening, I can't control quarantine, but I can control what I do within my limitations. So, my friends and I, who are also in the film department graduating, we decided to create our own book club, just to, still like give ourselves like that creative energy and that space of being able to talk about just different books that we are reading, how it reflect back to us, but also it was our time and our chance to catch up with each other and see like mentally, like, how are you doing? I think a lot of people kept talking about like, don't get sick and, make sure your physical health as well. But it's like, we needed to focus on our mental health as well. Because we're all stuck inside, and that takes a huge toll on somebody who's always out 24/7 and always busy. And now just to not be doing 3-4 different things a day and having meetings back to back and having to shoot for 8 hours and being now stuck in like my house and watching my dog like play like with his toys and stuff. It's very like it was just a whole like ride. But we did graduate virtually. And that wasn't really something I like. My friends and I, we didn't do the virtual graduation. I just had a couple of friends that were still in town, so they came over my house and we did like our own graduation party together, just because we were all in the film department anyway together. And then now we're just all trying to figure out like when everything's going to open back up. When can I start looking for jobs and production gigs and PA gigs, And my goal is by this time next year to move back to LA, and hopefully attend grad school. So that's like what I'm focusing on now, is applying for grad school in LA. And then just sort of like figuring out like my next steps. But yeah, so it's definitely a confusing time. But I just feel like whatever I can control, that's what I'm doing. And everything else, I'm just leaving it up to God at this rate. So.
Well, I love that story about the book club, and I think that's like very like it's classic Kemi, you know, refusing to take a shitty situation, you know, and instead doing something really powerful about it. I think that just shows like your leadership in the creative community, and you know, just a great message in terms of like how you can handle a situation, and create something positive out of it. And just in a similar story, the last time there was a recession, you know, we were all out of work in the film industry, and a few guys ended up starting a club called the 9 to 5 Club, where all us unemployed, you know, independent contractors in the film industry would just get together and like write scripts and talk about projects and create videos instead of like sitting in our houses playing video games. And then we ended up starting Expressway Cinema Rentals. So that's that's kind of how that ended up happening. So I think like keeping people in touch, keeping things going, you know, making positive steps towards, you know, like just keeping the community engaged and stuff like that is awesome. And I'm sure the people who are in your book club appreciate that. Lamont, I'd love to hear more about what you've got going on. You've got a ton of awesome stuff happening. I know you're doing some great work with Scribe, and but we are running out of time. In fact, I think we're out of time by a significant margin. But this has been great. You know, we're looking forward to being back at work, like you said, Kemi, and being able to support your guys' projects, and you know, looking forward to working together soon in the future. And Kemi, I'll see you on the next board meeting, maybe.
Yes.
I will. Well, best of luck with everything, guys. And appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. All right. Goodbye, everyone. It's been a pleasure. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
We'll see you next time.